right, thank you guys for being here. My name is Amanda, and I'm going to be talking to you about organ donation today. The need for organ donation is constantly growing, and becoming an organ donor is fairly simple to do before you die. Organ donation saves lives. Organ donation involves a donor and a recipient, and I'm going to talk to you about both sides, so being a donor and being a recipient, and the steps in the process throughout both sides. Okay? Being a donor. I will talk about the process to being a donor first. The first step is registering. You have to be registered in the state in which you live. Being registered is not a guarantee that you can donate your organs. It's just consent before you die to be able to donate. Being a deceased donor requires the donor to die in a very specific way or circumstance. Typically that's brain aneurysm, stroke, head injury, nothing like disease, cancer. If a donor is brought to the ER for treatment, the medical team does everything possible to save their life before ever considering donating their organs. And then if they become deceased, they are kept on life support throughout the process until donation is completed. A series of tests are performed to determine brain death. Brain death is irreversible, and only after it is confirmed can donation become possible. After brain death has occurred, the hospital notifies the local organ procurement organization, otherwise known as OPO. For them to be notified is federal regulation. If the deceased is a candidate for donation, then they proceed with authorization. So that means that they go on the registry and make sure that they're registered. If the patient or the deceased is not registered on the list in their state, then they will get consent from the next of kin for donation. After authorization is obtained, a medical evaluation is performed, including a complete medical and social history from the family if available. If the medical evaluation allows donation, the OPO contacts the Organ Procurement Transplantation Network, or OPTN. According to the Health Resources and Services Administration, OPTN operates the national database of all patients in the U.S. waiting for transplant. Each available organ is offered to the transplant team of the best matched patient. Throughout the process, the deceased has been kept on life support and has a team of medical staff that has been monitoring them and their organs. When ready for harvesting, the medical team is replaced with a transplant team who is going to harvest the organs and tissues. They remove the organs first, and then the tissues, bone, cornea, and skin. This poster provides a visual of all the organs, tissues that can be donated. We have the heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, intestine, pancreas, skin, tendons, bones, bowels, veins, and corneas. You would think after removing all the organs that are usable in the tissues and the skin that an open casket funeral wouldn't be possible, but it is. Organs remain healthy for a short period of time after removal, so minutes count. The OPO arranges transportation of the organs to the hospital or hospitals of the intended recipients. Transportation can include ambulance, helicopter, or commercial airplane. Now I will talk about being a recipient. Being a recipient for transplant starts with being diagnosed with an incurable disease. The only cure is a transplant. The recipient has to meet criteria to be put on the national transplant list. An example of that criteria are social habits of the person. Say they need a liver transplant and they are an alcoholic. That would be something to consider. The single hardest step to being a recipient is the wait. After you're put on the list, there's a really long wait. You don't know how long that can be in order to receive the organ that you need. When an organ becomes available, the OPO sends genetic information to UNOS, the United Network for Organ Sharing. UNOS generates a list of potential recipients based on factors such as blood type, tissue type, organ size, time spent on the list, the urgency, and geographical distance between the donor and the recipient. The transplant team at the recipient's hospital decides if it will accept or refuse the organ based on established medical criteria such as staff, patient availability, and organ transportation. If the transplant center refuses the organ, then the transplant center of the next recipient on the list goes on until organ is placed. Once the organ is placed, the recipient must refrain from activities that can damage and destroy the organ, such as drinking or smoking, and the patient is typically kept on some sort of prescription anti-rejection meds, probably for the rest of their life. The recipient's life is altered and quality of life is typically improved. There are also ways to being a living donor. So donating a kidney, segment of healthy liver, bone marrow, blood, and even fecal matter are examples of being a living donor. So this subject is important to me because last year my husband had a cornea transplant. When he was a teenager, he was diagnosed with a cornea disease called keratoconus. This disease is progressive, and for him it had progressed to the point where he was almost blind. So by the gift of donation, organ donation, he was able to get a cornea for his left eye, and he is now able to see way better than he was before, and the disease is no longer in that eye. He will have to do the right at some point in the next few years as well, and that will be a separate donor, so it's two different donors for the corneas. So some statistics about organ donation. On average, 114,000 people in the U.S. are currently on the waiting list for a life-saving organ transplant. Every 10 minutes, somebody is added to the list. On average, 20 people die every day from lack of available organs. One deceased donor can save up to 8 lives through organs and enhance more than 100 lives through tissue donation. Over 700,000 transplants have occurred in the U.S. since 1988. The cornea is the most commonly transplanted tissue. About 6,000 living donations occur each year, provided by the American Transplant Foundation. In conclusion, there are multiple intensive steps taken to being an organ donor or recipient, as well as factors that have to be met for this process to be successful. Several organizations are part of this process, and I'm sure that their jobs are rewarding yet stressful. The lives on both sides are altered in indescribable ways. The donor's family may get a sense of being able to help somebody, and maybe that makes the death of their loved one a little less painful. The recipient gets to have a better quality of life and possibly extend their life as well. Organ donation is a crucial part of our lives as humans, and being in the medical field opened my eyes to the need and importance of organ donation. Any questions?
Talk to us about your husband when he got his cornea transplants or cornea transplant.
So the process for that was, he had been seeing a cornea specialist for a few years, and they had come to the conclusion that the only cure for him was to have a transplant. We waited about 6 months before he was scheduled for the surgery, and there was a donor. The donor didn't come until like a few days before he actually had the surgery. So since then, it's been a year now. He has to take prednisone eye drops every day to make sure that rejection in his cornea isn't going to happen, and so far so good. His vision is very, very much better than it was prior to the surgery. So the process was fairly simple on our end, but I'm sure the donor's side was not so much.
Thank you.
Anything else? No?
So you had stated that he is going to have to do the other eye eventually.
Yes.
Is he already on a list for that? So when it's time, he's able to...
So no. Because corneas are the most commonly transplanted organs, it's not as long of a wait time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I assume that they know that he needs the other eye done, obviously, but didn't have to like be put on a list or anything. They'll just say your surgery is in 3 months, and then by that time they'll have
and everything will be ready.
Yeah. Cool. Good. Is that it?
I'm gonna pan in and get a look at your board.
Okay. Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you guys
Thank
for
you.
being here.